today's topic was a question that was made, or a comment made under one of my videos. And this was from Gregory White, 8078. Why are your cichlids so calm? I have murder every week. And that is the number one reason I think people either avoid cichlids altogether or get out of cichlids once they've started in cichlids. They get tired of the aggression, and so they end up leaving the cichlid world. So I thought it'd be a good topic to visit, and I guess to revisit, because it's something that I've talked about in the past. I have a few things that I think are a reason. Now, of course, while I'm talking about this, you'll probably see a fish kill a fish behind me. One of those Murphy's Laws, right? That leads to superstition. Don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. You'll jinx it. You know? Hopefully nobody's going to kill anybody behind me while I talk about this. The first reason I think I'm able to have these big haps behind me without a tremendous amount of aggression. Now, keep in mind, the tank has its moments. And by that, what I mean is there are moments where I have to come down and fill up a pit that a fish has created, like a breeding pit, things like that, because it's getting a little bit out of hand. Or sometimes after a water change, one of the fish will go into breeding dress color and kind of lose their mind for a little bit. So I got to keep a close eye on it. But day in and day out, what you see behind me is kind of what you get. They're kind of drifting around. The Buccochromis rhodesii yellow is asserting himself usually as a boss, and will sometimes corral the fish to one side of the aquarium while he digs a pit in this back corner back here. And then I go and I fill in the pit. I've got this sort of gravel rake. I'll fill in the pit, and then he'll get busy trying to make it again and stop chasing fish. But the thing is that some of you are not going to be able to do much about unless you have the space and the budget. But I think a big part of it is the fact that they have a lot of room to swim in. And so it's not like they're all defending and fighting for this 110, this 20 by 15, this 40 by 20. I mean, they're not fighting for this real small piece of real estate. There's a lot of room. So having a tank that's 300 gallons with a lot of front to back, I think makes a big difference. So if you want to get big haps and you want to have them to get along to some degree, one of the parts of your equation is probably going to have to be a big tank. If you can't spring, $3,000 to buy something brand new, something custom, with the stand and the canopy and all the equipment, and you're going to be in it about $3,000, maybe more. You can always go the Facebook Marketplace, the Craigslist route, and you can get great deals there. Just try and end up with something that's at least 6 feet across. This one is 7 feet across, so it's got a little extra room. It's got about 33 inches front to back. I mean, it's got a lot of room, but at least 6 feet across. So we're talking about a 125, ideally 150, 180 or larger, and that's going to calm things down because they're not going to have the stress of just being too cramped. Now, that I don't normally adhere to the idea of overstocking an aquarium. There are a lot of folks out there who are like, well, spread the aggression, take that 75 gallon and put 40 peacocks in it, 40 haps, and that'll spread out the aggression. Yeah, I mean, that's worked for a lot of people. But it's not something I normally would do or have done. I've been able to have a peaceful tank in a moderately stocked tank. So, but for some of you, overstocking might be a way to spread things out. I would probably consider doing that if I had a peacock tank, only because based on my history, my experience, I have found that peacocks are a little bit more anxious to take each other out, fully take each other out, more than the haps. The haps, the haplochromas tend to establish a pecking order, and once they've established that hierarchy, it just sort of settles in, and you'll get occasional challengers for the top spot, but with no females in the tank, it tends to kind of settle out, kind of work its way out, and it stops being a problem. The peacocks, I've noticed, they really will stay on each other until the fish that they think is a threat is eliminated, killed. In particular with your Mbuna, your albino and Mbuna type, those fish, but the OBs in particular and albinos in particular, perhaps in third place Mbuna for aggression. And then I would put the haps overall in fourth place as far as Lake Malawi fish go with aggression, which is why behind me you don't see any peacocks, even though I love peacocks. For me, some of the most beautiful Lake Malawi fish include a bicolor 500, a flavescent, a Benga sunshine, right? A ruby red. These are, I think, some of the most beautiful fish that come out of Lake Malawi. But I don't have them because I found that once they get that little switch flipped in their head and they get triggered, they just go after each other until the other fish is not just immobilized but dead. That's just been my anecdotal experience with it. So we get into the topic of tank mates, getting the right combination of fish. Now, it's been real interesting because adding fish to this tank, I have added one at a time and had it be successful when the fish was small. Too big to fit in the mouth, but small enough to not be really a challenge. Now, as that fish is put on size, for example, the Venusis in the aquarium behind me, is that Venusis going to become a problem with the Fusco? Quite possibly, as he puts on size. He's definitely a good-looking Venusis. He's chunky. He's got a lot of great color, a lot of great attitude. That might be a problem down the road. But when I first put him in, he was so small everybody ignored him, including the Fusco, which has put on tremendous size. The Bugochromis rhodesii yellow, just a giant stud of a fish, very thick, large, perhaps the most aggressive fish in there, apart from the fire hap, ignored the Bugochromis noditania, completely ignored him. Now that the Buco-nono is putting on size, he's starting to pay a little bit more attention to him. So we'll see where that goes. They've been around for so long, maybe they'll be okay. When you have cichlids, right, you're always on the alert. Your head's always on a swivel. And you always have a spare tank and some seeded media ready to go in case you need to fire up a tank real quick and separate some fish. Another point, and some of you are not going to agree with this. Some of you are going to adhere to a different philosophy in this area. Some of you have undecorated cichlid tanks, the theory being there's nothing to claim and there's nothing to defend. I get it, and I have seen completely just substrate, nothing else, no rocks, no nothing. I have seen cichlid tanks like that, and I've seen them work They function. In my case, I have, you'll notice behind me here, there are breaks in line of sight. I do that because if a fish is being harassed, they have an opportunity to get behind a plant and relax a little bit. The fish that's harassing them will normally chase them a few times around the plant, but usually gets tired of that game and will drift off. In particular because it's a big tank and has a lot of drift off space. If this was half the size, that one line of sight break would be better than nothing, but there would be not enough real estate for the aggressor to drift off, and so the chases might go so long that eventually the subdominant fish gets beat up and subdued and probably killed off. Breaks in line of sight, that's going to be very, very important in the area of aggression. Another point, and this is one that I think you'll all agree with, is using the best nutrition you can provide. So the reason I bring up nutrition is that you've heard the term, right? Hangry. A hangry fish. You don't want a hangry fish. Hangry fish will tend to be a bit overly aggressive. They're hunting for food. They're just on edge. Now, this doesn't mean you should overfeed or what some people call power feed. I've never power feed. Power feed for me is Malawi, another word for Malawi bloat. But use food that's going to be bioavailable, that is not full of fillers and dyes, and is nutritious. That's why, things like Extreme, I use some of the Cunningham food. I know he really cares about fish. He's developed his own formula. I use some of the Super Cichlids products. I use, of course, Sarah and Northman. So provide good quality food, and that'll take off some of that hangry edge that the fish can have sometimes, and just something to keep in mind. And I've got to include in the number of tips that I'm providing.